I feel like I'm genuinely living in some sort of bizarro world right now. I wake up, and like clockwork, there is another Starfield controversy. This feels like the Fallout 76 days, where you couldn't go 25 minutes without Bethesda cocking something up. There was that whole situation with the canvas bags, where they promised their customers top quality and instead provided the bare minimum. They gave them knockoffs. Their customers were not happy, they complained, rightly so, and Bethesda's response was, we can't do anything about it. This was literally in writing, in emails to their customers, their representatives saying, we can't do anything, it's too much work, too expensive to provide canvas. We were simply happy to false advertise. And these scandals continued pretty much every day. Surprisingly, they are still in business, and today we have yet another Starfield L, courtesy of one of their developers, Emil Pagliarulo. I think that's right. Emil has basically been the story lead at Bethesda for a long time, and there seems to be a correlation with the more Emil gets promoted, the worse Bethesda games become. Fallout 4, for instance, you take all of its story problems, its narrative issues, they were primarily the fault of Emil. He was in charge there. And if you look at all of Bethesda's popular games, whether it's Skyrim, whether it's Fallout 3, they succeeded not because of their story, but in despite of them. Most of the feedback from fans has always been, these worlds are fantastic to explore, there's great things going on, but when it does come to the narrative, some of the ways the quest lines are written, they are a little bit weak. And they've provided that feedback to Bethesda, who've basically over the years wiped their ass with that feedback, and they've said to Emil, bravo, great job, we're gonna keep promoting you, we're gonna keep giving you these higher paid positions. Now, Emil as story lead, because he keeps failing upwards, he of course did plenty of the writing on Starfield, and it was predictably terrible. We've of course had all of the fan backlash, and as we've come to expect from Bethesda, they've responded in kind. They've been blaming the customers, they've been telling us we're playing the game wrong, and Emil, he's got the same mindset. He's basically written a long group of tweets where he implies if you're not a developer, you don't understand how difficult it is to make a game. You can't criticize it if you don't have this in-depth knowledge and experience like he does. Now, given he is a writer, he's managed to present this in quite a patronizing way, where you may think he's being polite, but under the surface it's quite clear he's angry. He's very upset that people don't love his masterpiece. And before I go through these tweets, there is something else you should know about Emil. A little while back, he did a TED Talk, something like that, about game development, about writing in games. He summed up his philosophy for writing with 4 words. Keep it simple, stupid. And you just know that the stupid part, he was referring to his customers, his players. He sees his own fans as being a bit silly, not being too smart. And the reason it feels that way is during the presentation, he claimed that RPG players don't care about story. He thinks the players only really care about picking up useless items like cheese and duct tape, shooting enemies. If there's any narrative, any dialogue, any talking, writing, the player is just gonna skip over it. They don't care, according to Emil in his world. Let's totally forget that Baldur's Gate 3 just picked up Game of the Year despite being full of a ton of rich text. Plenty of narrative, plenty of dialogue. It was at the utmost high quality. Then you get something like Fallout 4, which Emil penned, by the way. That game was full of total drivel. And Emil thinks it doesn't matter because players are going to skip over it anyway. Why put anything of any sort of quality in the game if players are going to skip it? There's no need to do any decent work. So that's basically where this guy is coming from. He thinks writing in games doesn't matter, it's pointless in an RPG, and that's why he's shocked that Starfield's gotten the criticism, not just for its lack of exploration, but also because the narrative is a joke. The main story, one of the least interesting Bethesda have ever crafted. And that's saying something, because a lot of their main stories are rubbish. And if we jump into these tweets, he says, "Funny how disconnected some players are from the realities of game development, and yet they speak with complete authority. I mean, I can guess what it takes to make a hostess Twinkie, but I don't work in the factory. So what the hell do I really know? Not a lot." Do you see what I mean about the patronizing tone? It doesn't sound rude on the surface, but you can read between the lines, he is pissed. His argument is totally disingenuous as well. He's implying that most people criticizing Starfield, they're talking about technical game development practices. No, Emil. They're saying the game is boring, and they're telling you to do a better job. You do not have to be a game development professional to know if you're having fun or not. I know you tried to do that in your Steam responses to those reviews, but it's simply a load of crap, and this example is just more of that. Trying to imply that criticizing a game is the same thing as thinking you're an expert on food manufacturing when you're not. What are you talking about? The real comparison would be, I go to my local restaurant, I order a meal, but it's cold, it's bland, it looks cheap despite me paying top dollar. According to Emil, I can't then go home and leave a 1-star Google review. I don't have the authority. I have to get into the kitchen, train to become a chef, and only then can I decide if the food's no good or not. Same with Starfield. You've got to be an expert on game development if you want to criticize it, apparently. He goes on to say, "Part of me really gets it. When you're a consumer and spend money on things, that gives you the right to complain about those things. I spend a lot of money on games every year, and sometimes it takes a lot for me not to scream into the internet's collective consciousness." I don't know if I believe that. What games are you playing, Emil? Because you have said in the past that you think that stories in games are basically worthless and people don't care. You can't possibly be playing other RPGs because you've learned nothing. Your games are getting worse. They're not getting better. And we've had some pretty decent RPGs in the last couple of years. Come on. I don't complain about games on social for two main reasons. I know how hard it is to make games and have too much respect for my fellow devs. I work for a game studio and it would be uncool and unprofessional for me to do so, but sometimes I want to. Oh boy. Let's be honest, Emil, you don't criticize these games because you know you'd get dogpiled on the second you do. If you were to try and say a game is bad, suddenly fans would pull back the curtain on some of your work. Then we'd see something that's shoddy. You shouldn't be throwing stones at a glass house as it is, so this makes sense. Most people don't have those constraints and are free to post whatever they want. The internet is a glorious wild, wild west, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And there was a time when I did exercise that right very freely. Now, most people would agree with this. The issue is it's more of him being patronizing. He's setting up that he's relating with the customer, but then he hits you with the cold water later on, where he basically blames us, so get ready for it. When I was writing game reviews for the Adrenaline Vault forever ago, I was absolutely that person who would say whatever I wanted about a game, good or bad. Sometimes the good was over-enthusiastically too good, and sometimes the bad was me being a sarcastic arsehole. I don't dispute that, Emil. You come across that way, that you are being sarcastic, that you are being disingenuous, so yes, I do believe you. Now, this is where things take a bit of a turn. But throughout that time, I actually had no inkling what game development was actually like. How hard the designers, programmers, artists, producers, and everyone else, how hard they worked. The struggle to bring a vision to life with constantly shifting resources. The stress. Heavens. I've always hated this argument where game developers supposedly have the hardest job in the world. Forget about someone down on a 100-foot mine shaft. Forget about people on oil rigs. It's someone sitting in a room developing a game. Now, I actually work at a software company. I'm not an engineer, but I understand the landscape, and you can get fucked with this. I'm sure there's plenty of hard workers, but I'm sure there's many who are just there to get a paycheck and go home. They might have started off passionate, but like most industries, there's usually a handful of people doing the bulk of the work and then a bunch of people basically coasting off other people's hard work. It's the same with every industry. Don't try and pretend that you're in some unique situation. This isn't me complaining about my job. I've experienced all these things and will again. It's the nature of AAA game development. But I also have a great position, and I am still gainfully employed after 21 years. A blessing considering the thousands of layoffs this year. I'm sorry, Emil, but I think that's too long. I think Bethesda would be in a better place if they had moved you on. I said early on in this video that you've been failing upwards. It seems that it doesn't matter what you produce. It doesn't matter the feedback that Bethesda give the company on the writing. They still put you in higher paid positions and give you more responsibility. You shouldn't be getting it because you've proven yourself incompetent. It's not just your work, it's your mindset as well. Keep it simple, stupid. What the fuck? All we are asking for is competent writing. It's done in other games. There's no reason that Bethesda can't bring some of those people in, incentivize them, and we see things improve. And I'm not going to be one of those people who subdues their criticism because I'm concerned about your job security or people at Bethesda. The truth is, if you're doing a bad job and consumers stop spending money when it comes to your company, you should be fired. Anyone there who's doing an incompetent job should be let go if that's the case. And it just seems this trajectory, Fallout 76, Starfield, something is rotten, something has to change. I'm not trying to change anyone's mind because of the internet, but given my position, I can't not share the truth. And that truth is, nobody sets out to make a bad game, and most game devs are incredibly talented, even if the game they release isn't up to par. I don't necessarily believe that because so much media, games, movies, TV, there has 100% been a trend where getting some sort of message out, some sort of agenda out has been more important than the product. So I don't believe that every game developer, their priority number one is just making a good game for people. There is proof in the pudding that that is not true. And I've also got the sense from a lot of devs that you don't like your customers, you resent them. So you can say this all you want, but I don't really believe all of it. I don't think that a dev purposely wants to make a product terrible, but I think they like the fact deep down that a lot of gamers don't like what you're producing. And then despite that, people like yourself get salty if there's layoffs, even if you produce something that no one buys because of your own efforts. And he goes on to say, see, I never knew this before, but if nothing else, video game development is a series of concessions and tough decisions. There's that perfect game you want to make, and then there's the game that you can make. Sometimes if the gods smile on you, those two are very close. This sounds a little bit like the BioWare magic we heard about years ago, where competent project management, good development, that wasn't really a thing. It was about magic that comes together at the last minute. None of this is true, Emil. I'm not a game developer, but I've worked a lot of jobs. Many people have, and they do not buy this. It takes good work, strong work, talented people coming together to make something happen. It's not the gods smile on you. You actually have to put in. And the stuff about concessions, you decided that there was going to be no exploration in the game. You decided to focus on procedural generation because you had devs who thought they knew better than their paying customers, thought they could just abandon what worked for Skyrim, the Fallouts, and just do something else that no one asked for, no one wanted, hasn't worked in similar games, and then you failed. Don't try and put it down to bad luck, which is what this God smile on you sounds like. You were incompetent, you fucked up, and now you have to face the consequences. But in order to get there, in order to get it as close as possible to the vision, the team has to push itself harder and harder, often while dealing with devs being shuffled around, leaving, looming deadlines, and creative decisions you wish you didn't have to make. Well, I heard that everything literally goes through Todd Howard, so are you throwing him under the bus? Are you saying he did a bad job and he had to compromise and you couldn't put anything good in the game because you were making these tough decisions? It doesn't really add up. This isn't a flawed gem where there's a bunch of good stuff and then a bunch of bad stuff. Most of it is dog shit. Basically, every decision that was made sounds like it was a bad one. What it sounds like you did is you cut everything that made your previous game successful and you focused on the faction quest lines. In Starfield, at best, they are serviceable, and some of them are not even that. Some of them are notoriously poor, they're boring, and the implementation, that was shocking. The way you engage with these quests and experience them, they are terrible because of the loading screens, because of the way you travel this world, this supposedly grand world. That's where you got it wrong. Acting like, oh, we had to make some tough choices. You didn't make any good decisions. That is the issue. And team is absolutely the operative word there. Lots and lots of folks doing lots and lots of work. Writing, level building, making character models, coding game systems, trying to schedule it all so it can get done and folks don't burn out and on and on. Get fucked, Emil. Every job is like this. Have you got some sort of tunnel vision? Have you had any other sort of job before? This is the same everywhere. Speak to people. Get out of your bubble. No one cares about this. It does not explain a bad product. It does not excuse the fact that customers feel like they were ripped off, that they spent money on something that was a waste. Other industries don't do this either. If you go to some sort of business and you tell them you feel let down, that they did a poor job, they don't write out an essay to tell you you're wrong, you got it all wrong. They usually have to take accountability if they want your business again. In games, unfortunately, you just know people are going to pre-order the Elder Scrolls 6. It is sad. And then he says, so sure, you can dislike parts of a game, you can hate on a game entirely, but don't fool yourself into thinking you know why it is the way it is, or how it got to be that way, whether it was good or bad. Who are you talking to, Emil? No one cares about any of this. We're the customer. Most of us are not technical people. We're just telling you what we played is no good, and we feel it's your job to fix it. I haven't seen anyone say we can do the job better ourselves. We want to come into the Bethesda offices and fix it. We can do it much better. That's not what anyone I've seen has said. They're saying that it is your job. You're meant to do it. It just seems like a total straw man where he knows deep down he can't really say the customer is wrong. So he's invented this subset of people. He's sort of arguing with no one essentially. And all you can really tell is that he's frustrated. He's not happy that people don't like his game. And here we go. Here's where it gets really elitist. Chances are, unless you've made a game yourself, you don't know who made certain decisions, who did specific work, how many people were actually available to do that work, anytime challenges faced, or how often you had to overcome technology itself. This one is huge. Most of that is self-imposed. Overcoming technology, that refers to your dog shit engine. People have been saying for years, get a new engine. Everything you do feels outdated. You said, nah, we're not going to listen to people. We're going to stick with it. We know what we're doing. And then when you've clearly got it wrong, you're acting like you're the victim. You tied your own hands behind your back, and now you're looking for sympathy. You're acting like people are unreasonable for bringing that up. Get off your high horse. Again, all this crap about, oh, so many challenges. This is life. This is work. Get over it. So yes, love games, buy them, play them, and complain to your heart's content. It's sort of the nature of the developer-player transactional relationship. Oh, he gets it. But just know that the game you're playing is in some ways a freaking miracle in and of itself. Normal people have come together to work for years for one goal, to bring you fun and happiness. So it helps to remember that, and to remember them, to remember the developers. I don't care, Emil. I'm a customer. I buy the product and I'll evaluate if it's good or not. I don't care about your personal grievances, your challenges internally. If you get it wrong, I'm going to tell you about it. You aren't special. Developers are not special. Again, we all work jobs. I can't remember the last time a customer spoke to me personally about how hard I've got it and gave me a whole bunch of sympathy. I don't expect it. I understand and live in the real world, which you clearly don't. And a lot of devs are like this. They act like they've got it so hard, it's all so tough, challenging. But at the end of the day, Emil, your argument is basically we made a game, making games are so hard, therefore you should be grateful because this is a miracle in itself. It's 2023. This isn't the case. Yeah, it is difficult to craft and make a game, but making the equivalent of a burnt pile of slop isn't impressive, and that's what Starfield is. It is slop. We're impressed by a well-crafted product that we want to play, that we want to have fun with. And 2023 was a pretty good year for that. There's plenty of top quality games that were released. They managed to do it, Emil, and you've got no excuse. Maybe you should just shut up for a while. Maybe everyone at Bethesda, they should just try and do some actual work. If you want to fix this game, give it a shot. I'm not holding my breath. I think you should just move on to the Elder Scrolls 6, and it'll be absolutely make or break if Starfield wasn't already. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.